In this video, I will show you the steps to follow to convert a table-based layout into a CSS-based layout using Dreamweaver. From eCampus, I'm going to download the zip file that's attached to the assignment. I'm going to right-click, save the link as. I'm going to find my web server, click on this. I'm going to create a new folder, call it Assignment 8, and save it inside. I'm going to navigate into that folder, show into folder, and I'm going to extract all the files in there into the same folder. These are the files that are inside. There's an HTML file called table layout, there's a branding GIF, and then there's one called images. In a little bit I'll be copying these elsewhere, but I'm leaving them here for now. Back in Dreamweaver, my files have been refreshed to show assignment 8, and I see the zip file that I originally downloaded. I can delete it later if I want. And I have the table layout to CSS layout folder, which includes the table layout.html file. We're going to open this file, and for now I'm going to minimize my CSS designer so that I can see my original table page. This is an HTML page that's dependent on several tables to give it this appearance. If I go and look at the code, I'll see that I have lots of tables in here. I have lots of TDs and TRs. Basically, the one big table gives it the shape here. On one cell, there's a header. In another cell, there's a sidebar. On another cell, there's the body. There's even a photo gallery that's actually yet another table inside of the table. So there's a couple of embedded tables in this one big table. And rather than making our pages like that, our goal is to make them all using CSS styling. Let's create a new file. I'm going to click on File, select New. Make sure I have HTML5 selected, Create. I have a blank file. I'm going to call this CSS Layout. And I'm going to save this file inside of assignment 8 and call it index. I'm going to start creating the layout just like I have with pages before, taking some things into account. I have a gray background, I have an orange or so header, the yellow cider, white body, and I have a footer in the bottom that's got a black background. I'm going to deviate a little bit from past lessons, and rather than using some of the codes, I will actually be using divs, which are more reminiscent of HTML4, but for this assignment they make a lot of sense. For example, I'm going to insert a division, an insertion point. I'm going to give it an ID of container. This will hold the entire design inside of it, but not including the body. The body we'll use later for something else. I'm going to select the ID container and split my code and delete that text in here and press enter a couple of times so that I'll do everything inside of this container. I'm going to create a header first. I will go to my insert menu and select header. I'll give it an ID of page header. Click OK. I'm going to have a section that will have both the left column and the main body. So I will add a section. Make sure I put it after the tag called page header. I'll give it an ID of page content. Press enter. Since I'm going to have some stuff inside of here, I'm going to erase that text, add a couple of spaces, and then add an aside, which will be our left column, an insertion point, class left column, just call it left call. After the aside, press return and add an article, and I'll call this one, and I'll give it a class of main content. I'll find the end of the section, press enter after that, and here I will add my footer. Give it an ID of page footer. And this is my basic structure for my page. Since I started out with a container, I'm gonna let it do a lot of the work for me. If I go back to my table layout page and find my table and select it, I can find at the bottom some information about this page. The left column is 180 pixels wide and the right column is 620 pixels wide. So 620 plus 180 tells me this is 800 pixels across. Going back to the index, I'm going to select container and minimize my files. I'll bring back my CSS designer. And before I do anything, I need to add a source. I'll click on plus, create a new CSS file. I'll just simply call this styles.css. Go back to container, click on container, and add this as my first selector. Pressing enter to accept. Basically container, I want it to be 800 pixels wide. And my margin needs to be auto on the left and auto on the right. If I were to look at my design, then I see that I have a centered box that's about 800 pixels across, with everything else inside being that same width. The page header in the original table layout page is made with text inside of a table cell. We'll be using a graphic to replace this. Let's move some graphics around. I'm going to go back into my Windows directory. In assignment 8, I still have this table layout to CSS layout folder. I'm going to open that. I'm going to select the images folder, and then pressing Control, I will press branding GIF so that both are selected. You can select them both using different techniques, but once you do, right click and copy. Then go back into your assignment 8 folder, right click on this folder and paste. Now the images and branding are both inside of assignment 8, as well as your index.html and your styles.css. And while I'm here, actually, I will also click on branding and drag it into images. I go into images, I see that the arrows graphic is here, as is the branding.gif. Now that I have branding.gif selected, I can see some information about it. It's 780 pixels wide by 170 pixels tall. So that should fit kind of nicely on our index. I go to index, select on page header, and in styles, make this our first selector. So our page header inside container, press enter to accept. I'm gonna go into the background properties and select a background image. Click on the URL and then the folder. Here's my branding.gif. Double click to accept. And I get this yellow bar across. I get the yellow bar because we have not given the page header container any height yet. If you remember, this graphic is 170 pixels tall. So in styles and page header, in our layout, we can control the height. Clicking on PX, adding 170, pressing return, and our CSS transformation is visible. I can now delete the dummy text on top, pressing delete to delete. Next, our left column and main content are both inside a page content ID. Clicking on that ID now. I'm going to give this ID a couple of properties. It's already 800 pixels wide. I'm going to give this ID a couple of properties. I'm going to add on styles and add a selector. Press return, and in our page content, I will just repeat the information. This is 800 pixels wide, and I'm going to have this whole thing float to the left. That way it plays okay with the rest of the code. Click on left column to select. Our left column, we said, was 180 pixels wide. So when I add a selector, I'll go press return to accept. I'll go to my width, and in pixels, rather than putting 180, I'm going to give it a padding of 5 pixels on either side as well. So I will reduce the size to 170 pixels and then make sure that our padding has 5 pixels on either side. If 5 on the left and 5 on the right. I will also float this to the left. Next, the main content. I'm selecting, going to styles.css, clicking plus on the selectors, pressing return. Our width here will start out at 620. However, we're going to have that 5 pixel padding on either side as well, so 620 minus 10 is 610. And the padding on either side will be 5 pixels. I will now float this to the right. If I look at my design right now, I can see that my page is coming along nicely. I'll split it again and now deal with the page footer. I click on page footer, click on styles, add that selector, press return. I'm going to give it a width of 800 pixels. And I'm going to float it to the left. So our main design is done. Let's start to copy some of the content. We have 5 sample links. On the left column, I'm going to select the text on content and type in sample link 1. While I'm here, select it, give it a hashtag link. That way it will be a live link, but it won't go anywhere. I can now copy the sample link, edit copy, and afterwards just press Ctrl V a couple of times, 3 times, 4 times, until I have 5 links, and then I can change these links to 3, 4, 5, etc. In our table layout, we have 2 headings, heading level 1 and level 2. I'll type these in the main content. I'm pressing enter after both of them because I will be bringing in more material. I'm going to copy this paragraph from the original file, selecting and copying it, edit copy, and I will add it after the level 1 heading. At the bottom of the page we have home, page 1, page 2, and page 3. Those are 4 links at the bottom. I'm going to type home space page 1, page 2, page 3. Maybe I should have copied them, but since I didn't, I'll just give each one of these a hashtag for a link. And I missed one. Let's change that. Now that these links are set, let's give this whole mess a little bit of CSS. Let's start with the left column first. In our table layout original file, if I split the code and select sample link, I can see some information about this table. It tells me that the background color is this F5E684. I'm copying the hashtag and the number. Coming back to my index file, and in my left column properties, clicking on background and pasting that color into the background color. Now my background color is yellow. The background for the page content is white. I'm going to go into the page content and do the same thing on the background color. Click, but rather I will click on the palette and select white. Pressing return. The footer on the original design is black. I will simply find my page footer and give it a background color of black. The background color for this design is gray. If I go to the code, I can find the body background color. It's this gray that is 6C. I'm going to copy that and paste it in index. I'm going to find, first of all, in my split, if I split my windows, my body, and add that in styles. Give it the background color of gray by pasting what I just copied. Looking at the design now, we are well on our way to making this a CSS-based layout. I'm going to add a couple of tags. First, the H1 for the heading level 1 and an H2 for the heading level 2. After the heading of level 2, there is a photo gallery that is all the arrows. There's 9 of them. I'm going to insert menu and insert an image. Click on image. I'm already in my images folder. I'll click on the arrow and click OK. So I have one copy here. If I were to edit and copy, I can then paste it several times again. Just gonna press Ctrl V to paste the remaining 6. So now I have 9 arrows at the bottom. They don't make much sense right now, but we will change the CSS in a little bit. Just before the paragraph starts, on the original layout, we have another image. I can paste yet another arrow in there, and it's at the top of our paragraph. I can fix this top one by right-clicking on the image and telling it to align to the left. These others will have to be in their own division, so I'm clicking on the first one, pressing Shift, and then clicking on the last one. This selects all the images. Once all the images are selected, I can click on Division. I will insert a division, and that will actually wrap around the selection. This will have an ID of photo gallery. Press OK. And because it's inside 610 pixel wide, and because it's inside another division, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Each of these images is 150 pixels wide, so 150 plus 150 is 300 plus 150 will be 450. I'll probably want some spacing in between, so I will add, let's say, another 60 pixels in between. When with that number in mind, I will click on Photo Gallery and in Styles, add a selector and give it a width with that number, 510 pixels. I will also change the margins to be auto on the left and auto on the right. That way it will float in the middle. If I click on the sign, I can see that it's floating. All of the images inside the gallery are still kind of bumping into each other. We wanted to have this neat table look without using a table. So I will click the very first one, and in Styles I will add a selector that will only affect the images inside the photo gallery. I can do that by giving everything a margin. I'm clicking on the link to make sure that it affects everything. Every side will have an extra 10 pixels of space, and that gives me my photo gallery in a couple of simple steps. Our image on top is not affected by all the changes we just made because it's in a different division. If I click on styles.css and add a new selector, I see that this one will be in the main content inside a paragraph. That's an image. I will then click on layout and make sure that the margin only has 5 extra pixels on the right side, and that should fix this image. Next are links. If I go to my original table layout and look at the code and scroll up to where we have some simple CSS coding, the body says that all links are this color right here, which I imagine is the yellow that we're looking for. I will right click the copy, come back into my index, and with that simple link selected in my styles, I will add a new selector, which is our link inside of the left column. In the text value, I will add the color that I just copied, Ctrl V. I will change the font weight to bold. the font size to large and change the font family to something like Gill Sans, so that it's looking a little bit closer to what we originally had. Ours are fairly separate, however, that's easy to fix. In our text, I will add line height to be at 0%, and it's looking a lot closer to what we had originally. I'm guessing we could make this a little bit larger, clicking on extra large, and that way we have large links that rival these over here. Next we have the footer. I'll click on any one of these, go to my styles, find my page footer, and make sure that all the text is aligned to the center. And I can click on the first home, add a plus in our styles, a new selector for our links, and make the text for these links white. I'm going to publish this page, just put. Make sure that all my files go up so that the styles are included. Click yes to all. So I can find this faster on my page, I'm going to add a link to it from my main index page. Assignment 8. Find it on my assignment 8 folder, click on index and put it. And once this is set up, I'll revisit my main page, reload. Here's assignment 8. And I can see that most of it is done and ready to go. However, my level 1 is a little funky here. I don't know why this is a different size than it should be, or why H2 is larger than H1. And I would like for this yellow to go all the way to the bottom. So let's go back to Dreamweaver. I will close the main index page. And I didn't add any extra H1s, but just to be sure, I will click on styles and add an H1 selector for our main content. Make sure that our properties are set with font properties. I'll change this to a Baskerville, for example. Make sure that the font size is large or even double extra large. Same thing with level 2. I will add this selector, accept it, change the text, font family Baskerville, and make the font size large. If not, maybe even larger. As far as this yellow is concerned, our left column background is this one. I'm going to copy this, pressing Control C to copy. And the container that it holds everything together has no color currently, so what I can do is, in my styles, find the container, find the background color, and add this color. Control V to paste. And that did the trick, except our left column is still not yellow all the way. I'll go back into Dreamweaver and see what areas I need to change. Page content is the one that has both the aside and the other content inside of it, so I will change this background color by pasting the new one that I have. That changes it to yellow everywhere. However, I can't go into main content and change its background into white. And that way we'll have all the colors represented. I'll put this again to check it out. Reload, and now all my colors are set. You can still play around with the CSS settings to make sure that the H1 heading goes a little bit higher than this. Same thing with the spacing in between. If you don't like just the 5, you can change that to 10 later. And same thing goes for the left column. You can add actual text to the header and make sure that everything else is copacetic with you. But in the end, we have created a new design that is based completely on CSS and not dependent on tables at all, while giving us the same neat effect that we were expecting.